Currently, he's a CEO and co-founder of Continuity. And one of the things is, just last week, they open sourced Jetstream with AT&T Labs. So it's a pretty interesting project. If you guys are interested, just go to Continuity website and should probably have some information about that. I just found out he moved back to LA, so he lives here on the weekends, Hermosa Beach. He's offered to host you guys at his house on the weekends. If you want free beers, and I just go and hang out with him, just get his address and come on down. So John, come on in. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me, and thank you for the intro and vendor pitch. That was basically the vendor pitch. I won't bore you guys with too much about continuity. I give lots of talks constantly, and I kind of created a new one last night and this morning for the talk because I didn't want to be vendory here. Is this okay? No. There you go. All right. Cool. So, who's the mock time? Are we tracking time? 15 minutes? Is that right? All right. Cool. So, big data, right? Obviously, there's some hype, or else you guys wouldn't be here. And I really wanted to talk about, is the hype real? Is this well-founded? Why is there so much hype? How did we get to this point? And then to talk about really, where is the market today? What's the reality on the ground? And what does it mean for everybody who's in this room? So, unlike most talks that I give, this is not going to be a very technical talk. It's not going to be about what is big data. I think you're going to hear more about that from other keynote speakers and things like that. I'm not going to talk about use cases of big data. I'm not going to talk about how our world is being transformed by data. I think you guys probably believe some of that already, and that's why you're here, and that's why you're so interested. But what I really want to talk about is the big data market, why there's so much hype in this market, and what it means for everyone in the room. So before I start talking about what I think, why should you listen to what I think? I have some big data street cred. Right now, I'll go backwards in order, and Subhash kind of gave a really good intro to that, but I started a company called Streamy in 2006, actually based out of LA. We're in El Segundo, we're in Manhattan Beach, all around the South Bay. And in 2008, we migrated from Postgres to Hadoop and HBase. So that was really, really early. HBase was not ready for that, and so it was a very painful process. It was also very cool because Hadoop was just getting off the ground, so I remember giving a talk at like the LA Hadoop meetup in 2009, and there was like 7 people, which was pretty cool, right? And it's very, very cool to see LA grow to this extent. I'm very excited about that. But basically, I was trying to use Hadoop. I was trying to be a user of Hadoop. I wanted to build an application on top of it. The problem was, in 2008, it just wasn't ready for that. And so instead, I became one of the committers of HBase. And so really got into the HBase community and really saying, look, I really looked at HBase as, hey, I'm trying to solve all these different data problems on top of with Streamy. The relational database is just not working for us. We have to do all different kinds of mixed workloads, OLAP, OLTP, batch, real-time, all this different stuff, right? And Bigtable, that paper, really I thought was the first system I had seen, the first architecture that enabled all of these different things to happen on one system, and it scaled kind of indefinitely. So that's when I got the bug in 2008 was, wow, this is going to be really, really cool, and I want to be part of this ecosystem. The other half of 2008 happened, and the stock market crashed, and my company kind of was the beginning of the end for streaming. But you know, the good news was that I got into Hadoop, I got into HBase, I became one of the lead developers there, and so there was a lot of opportunity for me to go. Facebook came knocking, and just as Subhash mentioned, the first big project at Facebook for what they call real-time Hadoop was around Facebook messages. Today, that application is, this was in 2010, today that application is all Hadoop, all HBase, it's over 30 petabytes, it's OLTP, it's search, it's all different kinds of workloads, many tens of petabytes, geo-distributed data centers, and in 2013 they had 4 nines of reliability. Pretty amazing system built on top of this infrastructure. So the fact that a company like Facebook gets value out of Hadoop and gets value out of big data is just undeniable. The value is tremendous. The economic value is hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of saved money. And so that's kind of what continuity is about. Is my experience at Facebook was that, wow, we're really doing a lot of really, really cool shit with this really, really cool software. Now, the rest of the world is just not doing that yet. How are we going to make it so that application developers, traditional developers, people who have already learned a whole bunch of technologies, how do we get it so they don't have to relearn everything again, right? In a lot of ways, big data reset the clock, and all of a sudden everything came down to the bottom level of abstraction. How do we kind of build those layers back up again, right? And that's really what continuity is all about. We're building a application development platform. So if you think of like an application server, like JBoss or WebLogic or something like that, really think about that for Hadoop. Both the SDK side of it as well as the runtime environment side of it. So there's all the context for you, and now I'll kind of give you a little idea of what I think. So it's really crowded and confusing. I don't know if anyone here was at Hadoop Summit last week, but it seems like there's 10 of everything. There's 10 SQL on Hadoop things, there's 5 distributions of Hadoop, there's 10 BI tools, there's 10 ETL tools. There's just a lot of stuff. There's a lot of different streaming systems, there's a lot of different batch systems. Now there's Spark, and there's Tez, and there's Yarn, and there's just a ton of stuff. That's really, really confusing, and if someone who doesn't understand it, even someone who does understand it, it's still just way, way too much. I think big data also means different things to different people. Some people think it's all about the technology, and it's about NoSQL, and it's about all this cool new stuff. Other people think it's all about the digital exhaust, and how do you extract value out of this seemingly useless data. And it's all over the place. And the technology side and the business side are really being conflated, and different people are having different discussions. But I think what's happened is, we've kind of gone through that trough of disillusionment, right, in that adoption curve. And there was a blowback on big data, I think. But despite the blowback, the hype still continues. My take on this is really that the world we live in today is a world of haves and have-nots, right? There are big data haves, and there are big data have-nots. If you look at the internet companies, if you look at the early adopters that have put 3 years, 4 years of development into the stack, they're just deriving tremendous value. Everybody else is really, really, really struggling. So why is this happening? Why is all this hype around Hadoop happening? Why is big data this huge thing? I really see it as a confluence of 3 different trends that's all kind of come together just to create all of this hype and noise and buzz. So the first is the stage, the kind of macro trends that we're living in. Data volume, I don't think I need to explain or argue. There's lots of data, there's more and more data, right? The way I think about it is, first we had web scale, then we had like mobile scale, and now we have IoT scale, right? And so the scale of everything is just astronomical, more and more and more and more and more data. At the same time, commodity hardware has come about, hardware prices basically dramatically decreasing, the cost of storage going way, way down. And then mix this with the fact that really software is eating the world, right? The commoditization of hardware has led to the power of software. And really a lot of what big data is about is the software you build on your data, right? It's not just about the bit bucket, it's about what you do with the bit bucket. So that's kind of the world that we're living in. And then I think about the push and the pull. So the push in big data are really the technology trends. So, right, you had Google, they wrote the GFS, they wrote MapReduce paper, they wrote the Bigtable paper. They really solved those web scale problems, right? That led to Facebook and Yahoo and LinkedIn and Twitter and all these other companies coming back and doing the same kind of thing. The good news is that, other than Google for the most part, these other companies, this technology is not a differentiator for them, it's kind of an enabler, right? They're products companies. And so the good news is they open source all that tech, right? So we all get the benefit from all the tech that they've developed. And so all of a sudden there's this new, super powerful open source software out there that just didn't exist before. And it's actually better than the proprietary stuff in a lot of ways because Google and Facebook have harder problems than a vast majority of enterprises. I think there's another thing in the technology world, and as part of the kind of NoSQL movement when it started, the way I always looked at NoSQL, and everyone hated the term when we had it, and a lot of people still do, is the thing I like about it, what NoSQL represents to me is NoSQL is about the right tool for the job, right? It's not like there's the SQL architecture and then there's the NoSQL architecture. The NoSQL architecture is 15 different architectures, right? It creates a lot of complexity and confusion, but it also means that I don't have to take the Swiss Army knife of the relational database and apply it to every problem that I have. I don't have to take my data warehouse and apply it to every problem that I have. There's different tools in my toolbox, right? And that's a really great thing for technologists. And then, distributed systems, scaling out instead of scaling up, right? That's a huge, huge trend, and that's really how a lot of big data technology works today. Then there's the pull. And I think this is ultimately why there's so much hype in big data. If it was just about the push, if it was just about commodity hardware, if it was just about all the data, it would be irrelevant. So we need something to store all this data, big deal. But what's great about it is there's a pull. Traditional enterprises are being disrupted. Competition is crazy inside of all different types of verticals, right? And you have the old guard being disrupted by the new guard. I think the most obvious, obviously, would be retailers, right? Amazon is disrupting the heck out of a lot of brick and mortar retail shops, as is e-commerce in general. And so you're seeing retailers being one of the first kind of verticals to go into big data and say, how are we going to learn about our customers? How are we going to compete in e-commerce? How are we going to basically not die by innovation outside of our company? That creates a huge incentive for people to spend money on technology. Huge incentive. There's also a kind of, vibe or trend inside of the enterprise moving away from proprietary licensed software. There's a lot of companies who in the past 20 years have been locked in to a proprietary vendor who has really abused the vendor relationship and charged them through the teeth once they're invested into their company, right? And there's a lot of large enterprises that's the last thing they want to do when they're building up a new house, right? They want open source, they want free, they don't want lock-in. That doesn't mean they won't pay Cloudera or Hortonworks or a company like that. It just means they don't want licensed software. I think the last thing is, and this kind of also touches back to the retailers, but not just in retail, in everything, right? Like Apple, right? Apple's a customer-centric, product-centric company. And I think the world is kind of seeing how, wow, that really, really works. When you put the user first and you create everything you do around the user, you can create much, much more rich user experiences, much better relationship with your customers. And data is at the heart of a lot of that. Learning about your customers, putting together different data sets. So these are like the confluence of trends that I kind of see. That's why there's so much hype. This is why there's so much hype. All this stuff is happening all at once. There's a push, there's a pull, and there's this world where data, 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 cheaper, 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 what are we going to do? So it's still very, very, very early days. And that's what I think we have to remember. Hadoop started like 7-8 years ago as a little tiny project. It really wasn't commercialized until 3-4 years ago. The relational database market took 30 years to happen, right? So to have some historical context, we're still at the very, very beginning of this, not even at the middle. The haves, they're really using individual heroics. I talk about this all the time. Heroes can do a lot of things. Put a smart guy at a problem, and in a lot of times he'll solve the problem. Now it may not be an infinitely scalable problem, it may not work for a different company, it may not work for a different problem. But smart people can solve problems, right? And that's really what I experienced at Facebook. It was like, hey, here's 10 people, go, solve this problem. 3 months, the problem is solved. That works at Facebook, doesn't work for the rest of the world. And I think that's really the problem that we have today is the technology was built for these companies that have lots and lots and lots of smart people who spend all of their time solving these problems. And that's just not how the rest of the world works. The have-nots, and this is not a dig at any company or anything like that, I just think that the products in the market today are partial solutions, right? If you go into, and this includes my product, this includes every product of all the sponsors here. They don't close the gap, they don't get you all the way. They're partial solutions, and they still ask you to do a ton of work. Tons and tons of work is still being asked of you. And that's, I think, part of the problem. But this opportunity is so big, the hype's going to continue. It's not going to die. So what does this all mean? There are people that are deriving tremendous value from all of this data, and other people are just struggling to find the value. And it's creating this issue, right? Every enterprise, every CIO, every person is like, do I make the leap into big data? Because I heard about this horror story about 18-month projects, $25 million later, and nothing was delivered. That happens all the time. So it's really scary for people to get into. And today I really think it comes down to the individuals, right? And that's you guys. That's who's making it work inside of different companies, right? Whether it's smart people sitting in the enterprises at the company, or it's through the vendors, through consultants, through SIs. Really, it's coming down to individual heroics. Tomorrow, I think it's going to be all about the vendor solutions, right? They're going to continue to mature, right? There's billions of dollars of venture capital and investment flowing into the Hadoop space and big data space to make it better, right? I think if you walked around Hadoop Summit last week, the first word on every single person's pitch would be Hadoop is hard, right? Hadoop is hard. Everyone's trying to make it easy. And I think that's what all the vendors are going after, right? There's different constituents. Am I talking to the BI person, the data analyst, the data scientist, the developer, IT ops, my sysadmin? There's a lot of constituents. And then there's a lot of companies who are targeting all those different constituents. My belief is really that it's not even about the vendor solutions necessarily, and it's definitely not about individual heroics. It's going to be all about applications. If you look at the relational database market, it used to be all about the relational database, and there was 25 relational databases. Now there's like 3 or 4, and Oracle is really not a database company, they're an application company. You buy your ERP systems, your CRM systems, your supply chain management systems. That's what you buy from Oracle, and then they send a very expensive database along with it, because the relational database enabled those apps to get built. What are going to be the great apps of big data? We don't know yet, right? We're still at the beginning of this market. But my belief is that the future is not having every single company hire a bunch of Hadoop developers, hire data scientists, hire ops, build out some infrastructure, build out a platform, and then start delivering value on top of it. Vast majority of enterprises will not do that. Most enterprises want to buy a shrink-wrapped solution off the shelf, put it into their thing, and get value, right? And I think that's, the kind of point of big data today is everything is really about infrastructure today, but what people want is value. And my belief is that applications deliver that value. And so really that's what my company is trying to do, and that's what I think a lot of companies are trying to do, is accelerate this market, not just by making the infrastructure more consumable, but by building vertical applications, building different patterns on top of it, so that an enterprise can access it through, maybe Splunk is one example. Splunk is an application that uses big data. It's not necessarily Hadoop, but you're abstracted. I don't have to build a platform to use Splunk. And I think there's going to be billions and billions of dollars created through these types of applications, right? The CRM of big data is this 360-degree customer view. Who doesn't want that view? Everybody wants that. And I think that's really how most people will kind of access big data in the future. Almost done. So, software is eating the world, and developers are the new kingmakers. And I really, really, really believe in those two statements. I didn't make up either one of them, but I put them together. Software is just everything. And our company's in Palo Alto, and we try to recruit software engineers, and it's freaking hard, and the salaries are freaking crazy. Crazy, crazy. And that's because so much value gets delivered from software. So much value is being delivered from it. And my belief is because applications are really how most businesses will get value from their data, developers build those applications. Whether it's a developer inside of an enterprise, or you want to have a startup, you want to do your own startup because you know about healthcare. You used to work in healthcare IT, and you used to do healthcare application development. You know all about healthcare. You got this great idea. If only we took that data source and that data source, put them together, and wrapped a UI around it, people would pay money for that. Well, today, good luck, because you got to hire Hadoop developers, You got to hire a data scientist. You got to hire an ops team. You have to build the whole thing yourself to deliver the application. And I think in the future, as the stack progresses, you're going to get higher level, and it'll be more like traditional application development. All right, so in summary, I think the hype will be real. The hype is real. It's very well placed. It doesn't mean what we think of everything today is going to be the way, but I do believe that this is going to be a gigantic market. That is also a self-serving statement, so take it for what it's worth. It's disrupting tech and business. Data is only growing, and the competition between businesses is only getting stiffer. There's many realizing that opportunity, and there's many who are not. Many companies are struggling, but I think big data is here to stay. Value will be realized, is realized, and increasingly will be realized more. The software and the talent around it are very critical at this stage right now. And so I think developers are instrumental to realizing this overall opportunity around big data. So that's it. The last plug, if you want to learn more about Continuity, go to our corporate site. You can go to our GitHub IO page, which has information about our open source projects. Try Loom. Loom is an open source cluster provisioning system, and Try Loom is a free version of it that we're launching in a few weeks to enable you to basically spin up Hadoop clusters in any cloud on any distro for free. And then Jetstream, as Subhash mentioned, this is a new open source streaming platform that we're open sourcing in conjunction with AT&T Labs. Really very cool new piece of technology that competes with Storm and traditional complex event processing systems. If you're familiar with those, kind of combines those two worlds into one. And that's it. Thank you.